Hi you guys, it's Froggy again. Today I'm making some parts for Lost and Found, which is my stop motion animation project. If you haven't already seen on Patreon, I think her name is Bops. She's a spider. I already did her. She's a spider, yeah, like a paper cutout puppet. So that's something cool that you can check out. And this is Blossom. And she's just a flower, and I'm going to show you how to assemble your replacement parts to make, obviously, a clay animation character. Now, Blossom's really easy because there's no face involved or anything to that effect, so we're just going to kind of jump in, and as you can see, I've already got most of my parts made here. Nothing here is overly complicated. The Blossom here is just kind of a rolled up little piece of clay, and the second spiral of clay, and complexity increases from there. And then as you get into the bigger ones, I've just made these little Sims plumb bob looking dudes and some petals strap around them, but we'll get to that. Alright, so to start, I'm going to attach this bud to this stem. And what I want to do, because I don't want that to look weird where the green is I'm going to take a little bit of green clay and I'm going to wrap it around the base and kind of smooth it down, but not too much because I still want it to stick out. Like, I probably won't smooth it all around the base of the bud. If your clay gets too dry for you to work with, you can always use a little baby oil or something to that effect. Mineral oil, baby oil, something like that. And you can work that right into your clay, and this is just regular modeling clay, nothing special. I'm just kind of rubbing it down so that it smooths out. Like I said, I don't want it too smooth, and you don't want to thin it out too much. See how it's starting to get thin? I'm going to kind of rub it back up a little bit. You want to have real clean hands before you start this. And if you're working with, green or yellow, your hands will turn yellow, orange, things like that. Red, your hands will turn red. Pink, your hands will turn red. So I mean, don't do this while you're eating lunch. It's probably not a good idea. So I'm going to go ahead and set this little piece to the side. Now, as you can see, we have a couple little leaves to attach. So I'm just going to stick that. This is one method that you can use, is just to stick it to it. Stick the leaf to the stem. But that's not very, what's the word? It's not very reliable. So another thing that you can do is using pretty much anything that has a tip. I'm going to use a pencil just because it's what I have. You can use your clay sculpting tools. You can use an X-Acto blade. You can use a butter knife. Just remember that if you're using a kitchen utensil, once it's been used for art, and pretty much any art or craft, it needs to never be used for food again, unless your materials are strictly non-toxic. But even then, I wouldn't trust it. So as you can see, I just made a little cross hatching here. And that's going to help it stick together. And I'm just going to kind of twist it down in there so that I'm not warping either shape. And just kind of rub it in like we did with the leaf base. And I do apologize because this is so small, it's kind of hard to see. You can also use like a wooden clay sculpting tool to do this. And obviously I don't have mine over here because I have no idea where my husband put them. So there you go. And I'm just going to repeat that. I'm going to put that a little bit further up instead of down. Because the story with Blossom is that she's stuck like this, kind of a little bit wilty. And she sees one of the fairies fly by and she's like, hey, help me out, bro. Make my little cross hatching. Sorry, I didn't mean to throw my pencil. And stick this one on. Alright. Now, as I said in the beginning, Blossom's small and pathetic and wilty and stuck together, so I'm kind of trying to mess up her stem so she looks pretty messed up. Kind of roll up the end. And we'll just kind of leave her like this. Now we're going to move on to the next one. Take that little tiny bit of clay that we had left. And we're going to repeat just like we did before. But as you can see, this kind of already has the cross hatching because, as I said, it was made out of a spiraled piece of clay. Stick that on just like that. Kind of want a little bit thicker piece here. And clay can be kind of hard to work with if your house is a little bit colder. So what I would actually suggest doing is washing your hands in warm water. Like, now, don't burn yourself, but you know, almost to your warmness limit. And that warms your hands up because, I mean, if the clay is cold, your house is cold, it's going to be miserable working with it, right? And if you do that, then it kind of just gives you a little bit of an edge over the clay. Definitely something that you could also be using a tool for is this, but like I said, I have no idea where I put them or where Mr. Muffin put them. And once again, just wrap this around. As you notice, I kind of went in an opposing direction as the petals, and I did that intentionally because I like things to be asymmetrical. It's just a personal preference. I think in nature that the flowers and the leaf wrappy thing, the base of the blossom, are probably going to face the same direction, but you know, that's the beauty of doing animation, stop motion, of making your own art, is that you can decide how you want it to be. And then we're going to go ahead and cross hatch this again. Just like making peanut butter cookies. Take that fork on the top of it. And I mean, like, if you're a little more OCD about your shapes and stuff, absolutely grab an X-Acto blade and cut them out. Or get some cookie cutters that you're never going to use for food again and cut them out. Or whatever it is you need to do. Cut them with a pencil? I don't know. I wonder if you could actually do that. Well, I'm imagining it. Anyway, I'm talking to myself. It's not weird at all. So this character actually has a voice actor, and I kind of want to give her a little bit of a plug. It's Val, V-A-L, number 4, letter S, dash San, S-A-N, at DeviantArt. So that's .deviantart.com for those of you who don't know. I'll check her out. She's a pretty awesome artist. She's also hilarious. And anytime you make like fold lines, like I just folded the stem back up because it was getting a little jacked up, just smooth them down with your fingers. Very gentle pressure, and work it back down. Also, like I said, can be done with the wooden sculpting tool. I would use the wooden tool for this anyway. And I just smoothed out all my little hash marks. Alright, so I'm not going to worry too much about this because if you look at this one, it's kind of curled up still, right? And if we're just going to do a replacement part, we don't want to do things too much differently, right? So I'm just going to place this like that. I'm going to kind of squish it down so it don't come apart when I lift it up, if I can. Lift it up. And there we have numbers 1. And number 2, and I'm going to set those aside so they don't, I don't want to put it on my desk, but set those to the side so I don't mess them up. And move on to the 3rd. And I will teach you how to do a flower. I did this, I used to decorate cakes for a living. So I kind of just did this like a frosting rose. I'm sure there are probably a cajillion and 7 better ways to do this out there. And this time I am following the path of the petal just because I didn't want it to look a little silly. This flower is a lot more developed than the other. So my spiral is going in the same direction. And, you know, there are probably a lot of people out there that are cringing at how messy I am with this, but I am not a very good sculptor. I get an A for effort, though. So I just made a little hole there, and I was just filling that in. That's what that was. Just kind of smoothing it. And once again, we're not being overly careful because of the way that Blossom is curled up. And because she's kind of small. Just be careful not to crush your petals because they become excessively hard to pull apart once you get a little further along in this. If you do, just kind of try to work them out. And you can use your wooden sculpting tool. It looks kind of like a little wedge. Like it looks like this. I don't know if you can see that, but that's the tool I'm referring to when I'm talking about the wooden sculpting tool. I know there's like 8 of them. Just bear with. Like I said, I'm not a sculptor. And I'm probably going to toss this pencil when I'm done. Just because I hate the feeling of clay. And I am not washing a cheap ass mechanical pencil. It's just not going to happen. The other reason I don't want to smooth the leaves all the way down is because when you look at a real plant, the leaves have quite a bit of definition from the stem. Because as it unfolds from the stem, it kind of looks like it may have been wrapped at one point or another. And now, I probably should have used some wire for this one, but you can actually use wire in the stem to support it. But I'm pretty sure I put my wire away in the other room. I am not going to go get it. I'm sorry if I just bumped the camera. Alright, so we're just going to kind of leave her like this. And then I'm going to uncurl her tail a little bit here. And I'm going to set her off to the side with her others. We'll just support the bloom a little bit better in between the flower, or in between the leaves here. And that sculpting tool, like I said, that thing's going to be great because if that gets stuck together later on, I can always pull it apart. And now I'm going to take one of my little plumb bobs here. I'm going to hash it. Hash my stem. Oh, good deal. Alright, so I'm just going to work this piece of floral wire into my stem now. I'm not going to care if it sticks out the sides, I'll just fix it in a minute. Alright. I'm sure there are about 700 billion better ways to do this too, but this is what I'm doing. Because I am a cool kid. And this is me just making sure that the wire is covered. Take a little extra if you need it. I'm trying to keep it even. Alright, and then we'll just stick this on the end. And gently work everything together. Make sure everything is even. Anything lighter than this green, and I probably wouldn't roll over that graphite either, because it'll pick it up. Alright, still remembering that this still is clay and being slightly delicate with it. What you're going to do is you're going to take one of your petal wraps, your petal slices, whatever, and as you wrap it, just kind of fold that outward at the top. And then break it off. But before you tuck it, start the next one. Because when you look at a rose in real life, those petals are tucked. Right? Right. Good job. If you don't have fingernails, obviously, you can use your sculpting tool, your X-Acto knife, pencil, whatever you have, to kind of pull that back out if you do what I did and you squish it. And then you start, oop, this one's a little bit fat. And I have no idea where my phone is, so sorry. Just kind of bear with me. And you can kind of make ripples too, because rose petals have a little bit of a ripple to them. I'm not going to worry about that outside layer because it's a train wreck. Break it off. down. Start the next one. And as you get towards the outside, what I would do is break this up before you start wrapping it. I had no idea which one I was going to use, so. Go ahead and ripple it up just a little bit here. Tuck your butt on the inside down. Now you can make your plumb bob a little bit thinner if you want to. That little dude on the inside, the kind of heart thingy, like the heart of the rose. Dun dun dun. So epic sounding. But I wasn't sure if I was going to give her a face or not. So I went ahead and made mine thick. And sometimes the wire can be a pain in the butt to work with. But it's kind of like artist choice on that. And now she looks more like a peony than a rose, but I don't care because she's just kind of a fantasy kind of flower. Like the whole idea is that these are magical things, so she can be a magical peony for all I care. I'm not going to worry as much about the back this time because you're not going to see it. If this were a character that I was going to be using for something that's more 3D or whatever, I would definitely fix the back of that flower. Actually, I probably would have went about the whole thing differently. I probably wouldn't have used clay. And these leaves, I've made them quite some time ago so that they would be nice and cold and rigid to help support the structure. So now that I know how that one worked out, and that I have wire, I'm going to rip this up. Throw it at myself. I'm going to redo this one entirely. I only did that because we had that wire. Otherwise, I would have needed that to support the flower. All right. There's a couple of reasons that I'm not running off to grab a bigger piece of wire. Number one, I'm really lazy. Number two, having that loose end of clay means that I can double up the strength at the end, and it kind of frees you up for a little bit more movement without risking breaking that kind of clay skin that you're putting on the wire. What I mean by that is, number one, for me to move the other version 4 that's sitting here, I have to move that wire. The wire runs all the way throughout that stem. And that's a good and a bad thing, but I can't really make it coil up. I can't really, yeah, as you see, like these are coiled up. That would be something that would be a little bit more risky to do with that. And the reason that you do an entire replacement series of characters is to save yourself a lot of time and headache. With as far as like, you know, growing things or doing phonemes for speech or whatever. So it would kind of defeat the purpose if I had to sit there and rebuild the entire thing every time I moved it, you know, for one. And for two, like I said, really lazy, all the way in the other room. Already started recording. Just feel like it would be a lot of work. All right. You can also use glue for this, which I know seems counterintuitive considering it's modeling clay, but you can use glue for it. You can use epoxy for it, super glue, you can use E6000, you can use model glue. There's a whole lot of glues out there that you could be using for this if you felt so inclined. Excuse me. And it is going to look significantly different than that number 4 there, and I may very well go back and redo number 4. I'm not sure. I might not, because she grows from one to the other, so you don't really see them for that long. And be aware of the shapes that you're using. As I said, I'm using these leaves to kind of help to support the structure. So that's something that I can take care of, you know, take advantage of in the inherent design of a plant, right? Well, if it was a cow, then I could use the hooves to support a greater weight, right? Or if it was a dog, I could use the paws and give it comedic, like huge little funny kind of ears, like Chihuahua. I have one of those. They're just the ears, just ears. That's all they are. But I mean, and be aware of the various structural advantages of what you're doing. If you're building a Wookiee, you know, what can you do with that fur? I'm not even sure. You could give it a perm. You could give it a relaxer. Could be Cousin It. Oh, Cousin It is a Wookiee with straight hair. I never knew. And for a more focused, longer project, which Blossom would be a highlight, I just want to emphasize that I'm doing this quickly because she's kind of a sub-character. She's not really the focus of the project as a whole. And she appears for about 2 seconds, maybe 4, somewhere in there. So, not overly concerned with perfectionism at this point. Alright, and there you have a falling over. And there you have a replacement series for stop motion animation. If you found this video at all helpful, you can toss me a subscription, and remember that it's people like my patrons on Patreon that help to make these things possible. And stay tuned, because you never know what the hell I'm doing next.